Hi guys, how's it going? Roland here from the Chicago Synth Exchange. Super happy to introduce you guys to the new member of the Sequential 6 family that includes the Prophet 6, the OB6, and the all-new Trigon 6. You might be asking, what on earth is the difference between these things? Because they all kind of look relatively similar. So as you know, the Prophet 6 was Dave Smith's first synth that was fully analog in terms of the audio path that included VCOs and an analog filter, right? So that was kind of an homage going back to the Prophet 5, but kind of modernizing it with variable oscillators at the time, high-pass filter as well, and onboard DSP, so effects, right? Then the next one was the OB6. Same chassis as the Prophet 6, but that included the Oberheim SEM filter that you found on the Synth Expander modules. That included the normal SEM, which is the mono synth, the 2-voice, the 4-voice, and then the 8-voice. Fast forward to a few years later, we got the Trigon 6. This is kind of an homage going back to Moog back in the 70s and in the early 80s. So I kind of view it as sequential spin on the Mini Moog and also the Memory Moog, which the Memory Moog is beloved by many people. What's better nowadays, we got that flavor in this 49 key format, which makes it really good in the studio, makes it really good on the go, and there is no menu diving associated with this. So it includes the ladder filter by Moog that also has a true pole option. I don't believe the original Memory Moog had that. I know the Mini Moog certainly did not have this option, but you have half and full keyboard tracking. 2 4-stage envelopes, 1 for the filter, 1 for the amp. The oscillator is really separated from the past 2 iterations of this family of synths. You have fixed wave shapes on this guy, while the others have variable wave shapes. So you could have a triangle, sawtooth, and a square, but you could have theoretically all 3 on at the same time and get some pretty weird results. Same thing on oscillator 2. Oscillator 3 is a little different though, and I absolutely love the fact they included this because I could use this as an LFO through Polymod. So why might I do that? Because I could have keyboard tracking on there and I can control different things at different rates from voice to voice. So I have a triangle over here, sawtooth, reverse sawtooth, and then a square which I can modulate the pulse width for. Or you could use this as a normal third oscillator. It kind of gets too crazy at that range, but I like using it as an LFO, but I know tons of other people that for unison sounds, they would like to use this instead. I'm kind of going all over the place with this one, but these were kind of the 2 most different things. Everything else is pretty standard on this guy. It is the first in this family to include the vintage knob. So on the OB6 and the Prophet 6, you did have to do a firmware update where I believe the slop knob on the Prophet 6 became the vintage knob, and on the OB6 it was the detune. This one, it has a dedicated knob for that. You have onboard distortion, which is absolutely amazing. You do have aftertouch on this unit, which is really nice, just like the previous 2 synths. and the polymod sections here, so you could either use oscillator 3 or the filter envelope in this case, and here are the mod destinations that you have. You have frequency 1, 2, and 3, so that would just be the tuning of the oscillators, right? You have 3 of them, that's why there's 3 of these buttons. You have the filter, you also have pulse width 1 and 2, you can't modulate the source of the pulse width on 3, but you also have the feedback circuit, and this brings us to the mixer. You have the feedback and the drive. The feedback was a common trick that was used on mini Moogs back in the day where you would route the output back into the mixer. Makes it pretty dirty. You could use it in a subtle way. I use it occasionally on certain patches, more on like subtle sort of like chimey sounds, just to add a little dirt in there. Just enough. If I add too much, it's going to get pretty explosive. Not enough headroom. But then so you would go down here for that. The knob has a groove over here that it just sits in the middle, which is really, really nice for this synth. But then on the other side, you have drive. So everybody loves ladder filters. Everybody knows the historical significance between them. But the one thing that some people do complain about with them is that whenever you turn the resonance up, it does bring down the volume and it does bring down all of the low end. That does get kind of annoying, but since they did add this, and I know on some of Moog's modern offerings they have a similar sort of drive on this, it just kind of compensates that low end that you'd be losing. So it makes the synth a lot more versatile than previous designs employing this filter were. One of my favorite artists actually did the graphic design on this. His name's Tycho. As you could see, if you ever observed what his posters were for when he goes on tour, it's the same font. And I do think this minimalist sort of graphic design really suits how this synth looks and sounds. And then also the panels are a brighter wood. But yeah, guys, that's kind of the Trigon 6. So let's hear what this synth sounds like, and I can't wait to show you. Okay guys, so what we're going to end up doing now, just like in the last OBX8 video, I would like to make a patch from scratch so you guys see how I would approach making something with this instrument specifically. So since we know that it has a ladder filter, let's make some bass sounds, and then let's also make like a pad sound, because there's not many Moog synths that were polyphonic back in the day, except for the memory Moog. Very rare instrument, but it was known for its pads. This kind of captures that overall aura, I think at least, so yeah, we're going to make 2 pads for sure. Let's do it. So what we're going to do first, just like in most sequential synths, let's go to a patch that I actually haven't made yet, so this guy. So what we're going to do is press preset and write, just like on the OB6 and the Prophet 6, leads us to a sawtooth. So good way to really hear how the filter sounds. Like most ladder filters, you're going to have some low end reduction, and we're going to want to add the drive a little bit up here. Not all the way, but it's going to compensate for some of that low end loss that we get. So let's get a nice and tight envelope for like a pluggy sort of bass, right? No sustain over here, no release right now. We'll add that to taste later on. Let's add full sustain on the amplifier just to hear what's going on with the filter. The 2-pole. This is such a simple patch, right? But let's add the second oscillator over here, match the volume kind of in the middle. little detuning going on, but let's see. Use this for some synth wavy stuff. Again, you'll hear how much low end we actually have when the resonance is all the way down. Let's add a little more of that drive again. So it's already plucky. Let's do this a little more sustained. And this could also be kind of like a chord step. But it sounds kind of stale going on without any vibrato whatsoever. So in order to gauge that, we have frequencies 1, 2, and 3. We're going to enable frequencies 1 and 2 over here. A little too fast and a little too much vibrato. So you guys know me. Pretty subtle in the low end, but then it does give you that little ear candy that might be tough to kind of tell what it is in the beginning, but... So it already sounds pretty massive without unison going on. So because it is a sustained note and it is one note, I'm not going to really want the vintage knob all the way up if it's not in unison. I want all of these voices to be identical to each other. But I would want to use this, let's say if we are going to be putting this in unison over here. So we enable unison, hold on to it to see how many voices we want. Since it's a 6-voice synth, it'll be cool to hear what it would sound like with 6 voices. Pretty massive, but pretty boring now without the vintage knob. So let's hear subtly what this does. You hear that? So when you hear the resonance sort of like phasing on top like that, it's like, that's actually all of the voices doing something slightly different. So the tuning rate of all the oscillators are going to be slightly different. The gain's going to be slightly different on each oscillator, right? The cutoff point, the resonance point, and the envelope amounts are going to be slightly different on everything, and the envelopes. And whenever you hear the envelopes going in different rates, especially in a unison-like sound, you're hearing the different timings that the resonance is going through. So a little difficult to explain, but I'm glad that I made this so you could kind of hear what's going on. Hear that resonance, right? All the way down. It's getting a little more controlled. 100% controlled. So all these voices are doing the identical thing. But for like, let's say for pads now, I will want to have this vintage knob maybe over here. So let's get out of unison. Let's go up a little bit. Now we could transform this bass into a pad just by adding a little attack, a bit of release as well, because we want this to kind of just like engulf everything. Sounds great, super rich with saws, but let's add some squares on this. Play around with the pulse width a little bit. And now I'm actually controlling the pulse width motion, or the pulse width modulation, with the LFO enabled both on pulse width 1 and pulse width 2 on oscillators 1 and 2. So that would sound like just with that, so you could hear it. The pulse width is going at the same speed that the detuning is based on this. If I raise it up, you hear that, so. There we go. So another really cool thing with this synth that I love is the fact that the third oscillator could be used as a mod source through polymod over here. So let's kind of talk about what we would use that for. So it's commonly used with pads, from what I've heard on like the Prophet 5. Normally what people would do is set a triangle, have this guy, oscillator 3 mount the attenuator on the polymod section, go up a little bit, and then we're going to have it affect the filter. You always want to have this in low frequency, because what that does is sets oscillator 3 to vibrate at a low frequency, because all oscillators create sound via vibration, right? So even though this oscillator is on, we can't hear the vibration. So what we would use is to use that low vibration to actually control something else. So that's how this would be used as an LFO. And I like using this as an LFO for the filter, because if you enable the keyboard tracking, the rate's going to go faster, higher up you go on the keys, and slower, lower you go. So you hear that. And I could actually have different shapes over here. So we have a normal sawtooth and a reverse sawtooth. So I could actually, I can't have them both on at the same time, but with a triangle and the normal sawtooth. A little more clicky. Now with this guy, it's going the opposite direction. Just with the reverse saw. None, and then with the normal saw. More plucking, I love using this as a little effect. Now with squares, it's going to be an on and off motion, because it's just ramming in, going down, ramming in, going down. So. I like the reverse saw, well, not the reverse saw, the normal sawtooth and the triangle the best. I normally have these two on. Kind of silly territory now, but you get what I mean. So there we go. I kind of covered how to make a pad on this, and I also covered how to make a bass on this, and we kind of heard what the sonic differences are between the Prophet 6 and the OB6 compared to this guy. So yeah, if you guys have any questions regarding the synth, please let me know. Send me an email, Roland@ChicagoMusicExchange.com, or give me a call. My number's listed on the website, and we'll list it in the description below. And yeah, this Dave Smith really created an awesome thing. This is the last synth he had direct involvement in. And I'm glad how they took the spin of another designer, but they made it kind of like their own in a lot of cases, and it wasn't just like a blatant copy of something. So yeah, not much else to say about it. I fell in love with it the moment I played it. Definitely a different flavor. So yeah, see you guys soon in the next video.